talking about ways of thinking about movement. This is where I use something I call my slice and dice. Because of the problem of using words and definitions and categories, I try to create a lot of them. And I write them on the paper, and then I crumble them, throw them into the bin. And I keep doing it all my life. The writing them down and the geeking on it is very important. Also very important to let it go. I tell people, forgetting is not the same as never knowing it. The crumbling and throwing away is a form of forgetting, but it leaves some kind of a homeopathic trace behind. These definitions and in general the limitation of words ends up creating some kind of a corruptive process. The words corrupt us and corrupt our understanding. So I think the brain, body, this Cartesian state of mind and thinking brought a lot of good, but also brought a lot of problems. And movement for me is the entity that ties everything together. It's the magic. It's the forza anima. It's when the coin spins and you see both sides appear at the same time. Contraction, relaxation. That's a spectrum. And pretty much everything falls on this spectrum. Also, in terms of analyzing a person or yourself, you can tell me if you feel closer to this side or closer to that side. And then it allows you to examine your practices. How many of the practices are moving you towards balance? And how many are it's your addiction of just doing what you're good at versus what you need? I use dozens of perspectives. And with the years, it gives people a sense of where they want to go, how they want to do it, and what they need to address versus what they like to address, etc. I call it the movement body-mind system. So when it's integrated, it's in motion. There is also a stillness that appears there, of course. Without it, there can be no motion, but maybe that is a very good way to start to think of things. There is no really pure mental processes, cognitive processes. There is no pure physical processes. Everything touches everything. There is a wholeness, and that wholeness is in motion. The movement practice takes these bits and examine them. And here is a pragmatic thing. The scientist, the cerebral thinking about movement, this is important. The emotional side, coloring, feeling the colors and the textures of motion. A lot of people who are involved with a movement practice never end up feeling motions, really focusing on how it makes you feel or how it feels itself. And then the actual movement, the action. So it's action, emotion, and thought. And those are three streams of movement, and they interlace together into this kind of a braided experience. And whole experience, and I try to bring all these aspects into my practice and the way that I live my life. It's an open system. It has no center. It's decentralized, and it can be approached from anywhere. And that's its magic, and that's the benefit of it. Some people find the body a good entry point. Some people don't even enter from the body. Sometimes you can enter from other perspectives, and then inside the body, for example, where should we enter? If we decided to take the body approach, the spine can be a nice decision, but some will choose just the pelvis. Any one of those points are valid. And then playfulness can be an entry point, an attribute, and this is so open. So I don't want to limit people and limit their minds in the way that they engage with a practice, but I also want to encourage the self-inquiry. Am I doing movements practice or am I doing a movement practice? It begins with education. And that's probably the most stable point of entry, awareness to something as a concept, that it is a concept, that there is a validity, or because sometimes people look for that, to looking at this entity, this open entity. That's part of the reason why answering questions is not something I can do or even attempt to do. I believe in the power of the non-complete process, like making this table, but leaving something undone, not perfecting the product, Why? Because it offers some kind of a dynamic nature of evolution that naturally unravels from it. All in flux. Nothing stops besides something that is the background of it and allows it to express. And this is the beauty of things. And this, for me, is the movement practice, is this examination and bringing this awareness into things. As we sit now here, I'm also aware of my body. I'm also aware of the way that things make me feel, the way that your face is communicating to me. And I'm not just in some limited and very verbal, overly verbal state, because it misses a lot of the beautiful flux. One thing is this, what you call wordlessness. I have been recommending to people non-verbal experiences and the awareness of the body, which is not really the awareness of the body, as you know, not purely or not fully. The awareness of motion is a very good way to start, to bring awareness to that layer. And that layer will start to get clarified more and more and more the more you practice. And then it will enable for most people a safe haven away from many states and difficulties, and will unlock a lot of potential attributes and strengths and freshness and a lot of beautiful things. So bringing the attention into those layers, it's a tricky thing. It's one of those elusive things to look at, but it's definitely of huge benefit to start to train it, start to practice it, to feel not our thoughts, not necessarily our body, but to start to recognize the dynamic nature, the flux, the motion. And it occurs in all these layers. You will need to find it in multiple locations before you start to more and more make it your own, make it really yours. I used to do this. I spent some time in Hong Kong. I would need to get my practice in, but I'm really turned off from commercial gyms, and there is not a lot of nature accessible there. So I would just strap on my bag and I would walk the streets of Hong Kong, which are very crowded. And then I would try to avoid touching anyone. And it would be like 2 hours of just like moving, fully involved, fully in my body and experiencing beautiful things and enjoying and developing myself as well in all kinds of scenarios, up and down and in the escalators and off. So this is an example of a way to practice. Discomfort, again, is necessary and should be recognized as I'm in the right place. When it becomes too high and I'm unable to resolve, to make any progress, I went overboard. But when it's not present, I don't do nothing here, nothing that I'm truly interested in. I'm just gratifying myself. Wankery. It's not about searching for the discomfort, but it's a marker. The question should be, who am I serving? Because people do not serve themselves in essence. They serve parts of it, some kind of a fraction of themselves. And this separation of oneself from oneself, and this is also a result of the practice, a good practice. Many times I am not my friend. And by creating this separation, I can assume a certain stability in the face of everything all the way up to our own mortality and death, which is, and maybe beyond, who knows. And if it wasn't difficult and we didn't need to redo it again and again, we wouldn't be again on this correct scale, which is dynamic and moving, just like rolling downhill. So there is definitely a necessity to succeed, to orient. There is certain aspects that you want to achieve, but then there is also the letting go of it and the de-ambitioning of it. And within that tension, the plus and the minus comes movement. And that's how again, if I stretch it too far away or if I increase one of them too much, then I would have some issues. But you will, with practice, learn to recognize the optimal point of progression. It takes many years and a lot of play and exposure to get a sense of it regardless of the layer in which it is applied. The one who changes all the time gets the general component, because what appears when everything changes, that is that new entity. everything changes, something stays. That's what we want to get, this concept and this understanding. I always believed, and I saw some information about it lately, that mutation is the heart of the model, not survival of the fittest. And this places the word change in the heart of it. What it wants to do, change. It's important to stay within the experiences. It's important to continue to promote scenarios in which the experience is primary. More open experience, let's say, and not try to hold down and define overly accurately, or if it's done, throwing it away and starting again. So there is no winning concept. You got to the winning concept, you got nothing. There is something inside of us that can go beyond. Hard to communicate. I can't offer it right now here, but I have the experience, and thankfully I have a practice and a way to sense it, to feel it, and to re-examine it, and then we can talk about it and have something from that. I open this window, the air would come from here. If I open this window, the air would come. I don't need to drive my emotion. I need to discover what is stopping it from happening. Something is constantly holding, and when we remove this, immediately movement appears. This is real deep movement versus the driven movement that is very wasteful at times. Like walking, you see people pushing through the walk instead of the controlled falling that it should be. Wild and wise is a nice combination of words I like to place together, wild, wise. This is something that I try to bring into the way that I live my life and my practice, and I try to bring the information and the wisdom and the collective knowledge, but I also try to let go of more and more until an essence is gleaned, until something is appearing, and because everything was already there. To sustain the game means to continue to change, continue to transform, and then to win the game sometimes means game over. Part of our sense of everything is actually a sense of movement, and then the stillness in the background of that. Using that perspective for self-evolution, development, of course, the physical side, but also movement of emotions, movement of thoughts, and any other movement streams. And by switching these layers and examining it from different places, you get a better and better sense of it. It's not important what I think, if it's possible or not possible, or if it's even possible for you or not possible for you. What is important is what you truly want to do, what you truly are after. And it's important for me because many times this way of thinking about things is already limited. A man doesn't go to the ocean to empty it with a spoon. A lot of the types of dressing up of the concepts nowadays is trying to fit an elephant into the hole in the needle. Yeah. What do you want to do, and what, but in the orientation of also what you need to do, what you sense, and what you are developing as a evolutionary direction for you. This is the important